Was there already only 19 minutes left?
And to Salat?
19 minutes.
I know it's Maghrib is coming in quicker, so we got to be really on our game as far as starting on time. Yeah, a lot of people they get off of work at 5, and by the time they get here, it's just like even me. For me, 6:15 was.
Dashing here and there, getting kids and stuff. For me, I have
Yes, very important. She's put in her work, though. I mean, alhamdulillah.
She did her fair share of work.
Hafsa, can you copy the link into the class and into the Signal group and everything, so I can start? All right, we are. You can turn them on. They're down all the way in the back wall, next to the thermostat. We missed you too, sister.
We went to Masjid in Manchester. No, Bolton.
Where is Bolton?
Near Manchester, UK.
Oh, in UK. Okay.
Because we had to visit Kaaba.
Ah, the UK has a different vibe as far as Islam goes.
Your beard looks so white in the thumbnail.
And all the taxi
My beard looks white.
Yeah, look.
Oh man.
Not in just the thumbnail. But because of the light saturation.
Oh man, I'm getting old.
It's not even that white. I don't know where all the other colors. You look pale. You look like a white person.
Well, you're live, so just so you know.
Hi, everybody.
All right, we're on Surah number 88.
They still haven't prayed. What are they doing?
I can't wait. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Surah number 88, Al-Ghashiyah. Please open up. I'll give you a couple moments for that. Muhammad Sheikh, one of the manners of class is to sit closer to the teacher, not farther away. Sit in the first row. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Surah Al-Ghashiyah. Al-Ghashiyah means something that's overwhelming. 88, yes, chapter number 88. I'll close that door so we don't have so much. Yeah. Ghashiyah means something that's overwhelming. The surah has 26 verses, and the place of revelation was in Mecca. And Sister Annette, can you tell us why it's important that the place of revelation was in Mecca? What does that mean for us in understanding the surah?
Typically, so that you understand if it was done at the early part of his life and revelation, which would be the Mecca surahs, or the latter part after the Hijrah, which would be in Medina. And they have different themes.
Okay, so what are some of the themes of the surahs that were revealed in Mecca?
The easier ones, the more to the soul ones. I think the Medina ones were more the do's and the don'ts and the rulings and the,
Okay, how can we put this into a little bit clearer terms? So what were the themes of the Meccan surahs first, and then we'll talk about the Madani surahs. Let's put it into clear themes.
like, who is God?
What? Yeah. Okay. Good. So first is Tawheed. Who is God? That's one of the main themes. What is another one? Big one. That's in the pretty much all of the surahs in the end that we talk about over and over again. Day of Judgment. Right? Because, and it comes from the audience. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows who the people around him were. The people of Mecca, they actually did believe in Allah. Right? What was the Prophet's father's name? Abdullah. He passed before the Prophet was even born. So they recognized the name of Allah. And they recognized that Allah was the creator and sustainer of the universe. But their crime was that they set up all these idols and partners with Allah. And the second thing they didn't believe is that after they die, that they'll be resurrected again. This is something that they didn't believe in. And that's why you see in many of the Makki surahs, this is one of the main themes. And since most of the surahs near the end of the Quran are Makki surahs, you'll see it over and over again talking about the Day of Judgment, talking about how this life is limited and the life in the hereafter is what we should be focusing on. Because they denied resurrection. So very good. And you'll see again, once again, those two themes are in this surah. And just to complete the discussion, the surahs that were revealed in Medina, as the sister mentioned, were more legislative. Because now the Prophet ﷺ had a state, so governance was an issue, family things were an issue, inheritance, divorce, marriage, all of these things, giving zakat, fasting, making pilgrimage, all of these legislative things and things afterwards that depended on having a state and depended on Muslims being a little bit stronger came in Medina. And you'll see those were some of the themes. And there's many other differences, and we'll go over them. We talk about this a little bit every week. What is one of the virtues that you can think of Surah Al-Ghashiyah? Does anybody know? One of the virtues of Surah Al-Ghashiyah was that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in the Friday prayers, often would recite Surah Al-A'la, which is the one before this, and Surah Al-Ghashiyah. So that's why sometimes you'll see the Khatib recite Surah A'la and Surah Al-Ghashiyah, and on Eid as well. And so this is mentioned, and so when we study a surah, we mention its virtues as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ الْغَاشِيَةِ? Has there come to you the mention or the narration of the thing that is overwhelming? The thing that is overwhelming here is the Day of Judgment. The Day of Judgment, the Day of Resurrection. Though that's something that's overwhelming. Why is it mentioned as overwhelming? Because the horrors and the events of that day will overwhelm all of creation, and no one can save themselves from that. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained for that day, it'll affect everyone. It says, has there come to you the narration of the overwhelming? So now he will, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks a question, a rhetorical question like this, then he answers it as well. So basically, do you know about the Day of Judgment in layman's terms, right? And now he's going to tell us about the Day of Judgment. وُجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ خَاشِعَةٌ. Some faces on that day will be humiliated. Some faces on that day, on the Day of Judgment, will be humiliated. Amilatun nasiba. They'll be laboring. They'll be working hard and weary. So the faces that will be humiliated will be those of the disbelievers and those who have, through their actions and through their beliefs, have earned the anger of Allah, who have disobeyed Allah to an extent that they have to be punished. And Allah mentions that they're laboring and they're weary because they're tired. They're tired that day because of their punishment. That's one reason that they would be tired. There's a number of reasons. One reason is because of their punishment, because after they died, what happened? They went in their graves, they were punished in their graves as well. Or if they were the last people alive, they were subject to the horrors of the earth ripping apart and the skies falling in on them. So they will come, those people who will be humiliated will come in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala day and they'll be tired, be exhausted. Another meaning is, and this is a very important meaning, they'll be tired because throughout their lifetime in this life, they work to do something. They may have even done good deeds. But because they did not believe in Allah and His Messenger, and they did not believe in the last day, they don't have reward for those good deeds. Right? So there are people out there who worship other than Allah. They worship idols. They worship anything else. They do some good deeds, right? We can't deny that. But because they don't believe in Allah, their good deeds are in vain. So they'll be exhausted because they did that work, and sometimes they even work harder than us. I sometimes mention that, and I don't know if the churches still do this, but back in the day, and I think sometimes they do, they used to give tithe, right? 10% of their income to the church. Some of the churches still do that. And when we ask the Muslims to donate for their masjid or donate for any organizations, it's like pulling teeth out.
And it's only 2%.
It's 2.5%, it's just the zakat. But if we ask them, to donate and stuff, it's like pulling teeth out. When we should be more generous than them, because we know whatever we give in the path of Allah, we'll be rewarded for it. And whatever they do until they accept Islam, they're not rewarded for it. If they accept Islam, then they'll be rewarded for the good that they did even when they weren't Muslims. But if they don't, then they don't have part of that reward. So this is one of the meanings of being tired and exhausted. Ibn Abbas, radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, who was the Prophet's cousin and one of the people who commentated on the Quran and explained the Quran more, he mentions this is mostly in relation to the Christians. Mostly in relation to the Christians, because they do a lot of good deeds. But because they attributed someone as a son of God, they don't get rewarded for those good deeds. And we don't say this in a place of hatred or being condescending or anything like that. We hope that they all come to this religion. Our relatives, our friends, our neighbors who are Christian, and we hope that they all come. We feel bad about it. It shouldn't be something we're condescending about or something that we're not putting them down. But this is the reality that the key to earning Allah's pleasure is to believe in Him correctly first. Tasla naran hamia, and they will enter into the hot, blazing hellfire. Tusqa min aynin ani, and they will be given drink from a boiling spring. It'll be extremely hot water. In other places in the Quran, it mentions how the water will be so hot that it will burn them from the insides. لَيْسَ لَهُمْ طَعَامٌ إِلَّا مِنْ ضَرِيعٍ, and there will be no food for them except for a thorny plant called al-dari. Al-dari is a thorny type of tree, and no animal eats it. It's bitter, It doesn't give them any nourishment, and it just hurts them more. Every Everything in the hellfire, everything that they're given will just increase their pain and punishment. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us this to warn us, and telling this to the people to warn them that when Allah is this merciful, that He's given us our life, given us our intellect, sent the Prophet to us, sent the book to us, sent people to teach us, and we still deny all of it, that this will be our punishment. So sometimes we just need to sacrifice, subdue our egos, so that we're doing the right thing. لَيْسَ لَا يُسْمِنُ وَلَا يُغْنِي مِنْ جُوعٍ, which will that fruit will neither nourish them nor avail them against hunger. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, many times He mentions punishment, He also mentions reward. He mentions both, because He who created us knows our psychology better than anyone else. For some people, the fear of punishment motivates them, and for some people, the anticipation of reward motivates them. So He gives us both. Chapter number 88. Wujuhun yawma idhin na'ima. He says, other faces on that day will be joyful. Other faces on that day will be joyful. Lisa'iha radiya. And they will be happy. They'll be glad with their endeavors. They'll be happy with the work that they did. Meaning, unlike the people before whose faces were humiliated and darkened and burned, and they were tired and weary from what they did, these people will be joyous. The people of heaven will be joyous, and they will be happy with what they did. Fi jannatin aliyah, and they will be in paradise, a lofty paradise. They'll be in a high station. La tasma'u fiha laghiya, and where they shall never hear harmful speech nor falsehood. In heaven, there will be no harmful speech. Nobody will be yelling. There will be no falsehood. Nobody will be lying or deceiving anybody. There'll be no arguing or cursing or any type of these types of things which we find to be a negative. Number 88, Al-Ghashiyah. Yes, the overwhelming. Brother Shams, if you need a Quran, there should be one in the red bin. Fiha aynun jariya, and there'll be a running spring. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Fiha surrun marfu'a, and there'll be thrones. People of paradise will be on thrones, raised high. Wa akwabun mawdu'a, and they will have cups set at hand. And in these cups, they'll be given various types of drinks. There's one drink that is, it's whiter than milk and sweeter than honey. There's another type of drink, which is the water of paradise, where if a person drinks it one time, they'll never be thirsty again. There's another type of drink, which is an alcohol which doesn't make somebody drunk, which is delicious and pleasurable, but it doesn't cause intoxication. So there'll be different types of things that are served to them in these cups. وَنَمَارِكُ مَصْفُوفَةٌ, and they have cushions set in rows for them to recline on. وَزَرَابِيُّ مَبْثُوثَةٌ, and rich carpets spread out. So this is the first part of the surah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions first asks us the question if we know about the overwhelming about the day of judgment. Then he mentions the people of hellfire and what their condition will be. Those who have disobeyed Allah, what their condition will be on that day, and the horrors to which and the punishments to which they'll be subjected. He mentions then the people of paradise, those who obeyed Allah and were forgiven, and he mentions the rewards and the beautiful things that they will experience. And then he asks another question. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Do they not look at the camel and how it was created? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this part is now giving evidence, now forcing us to think and look at the world around us and look for the signs of his creation and his power, that he created everything. And his power is, we can see it in everything. So do they now look at the camels and how are they created? And he gives the example of the camels here because the Quran was revealed in Makkah to the people of that area, and to them the camel was something, it was their most prized possession. It was their biggest form of wealth. It was their car. It was their family vehicle. It was what they depended on. They depended on the milk of the she camel for their sustenance. So it was something that was very great and something honored and something that was around them. وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ. And look at the heavens and how it was raised. In many places in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions how the sky is a roof above us. It doesn't have any pillars holding it up. And he challenges us in Surah Al-Mulk to look at the sky and see if you find any cracks. Look at it and see if you find any imperfections. You don't. The sky is perfectly laid out. وَإِلَى الْجِبَالِ كَيْفَ نُصِبَتْ. And look at the mountains and how they are rooted and fixed firm in the earth. وَإِلَى الْأَرْضِ كَيْفَ سُطِحَتْ. And look at the earth and how it's spread out wide. And it's spread out wide, making it habitable for man. Right? We have many planets in the solar system, if you studied this in school, that are, and all of them are not habitable. Right? Some of them don't even have land like this. They're just gas. So nobody could live on them. And some of them are so hot or so cold and they're so extreme in their temperatures that human life couldn't exist there. فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرْ. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds his prophet. He says, remind them, you are only one who reminds. We mentioned this before, that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, would take it to heart many times when people would refuse and deny his message. And he wouldn't blame Allah, he would blame himself that maybe I'm not doing this right, or it would just be like he would feel really sad that people weren't listening to him. Because remember, these are his relatives. These are the people who we grew up with. And the same way we kind of feel bad when our families don't accept Islam, right? He felt this way too. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding him here that remind the people, your job is just to remind them. Your job is not to guide them. Your job is to remind them. And this is a lesson to all of us as well. We get the question a lot of times that my grandmother or my mother or my father or my brother or my husband, my children are not Muslim. How do I bring Islam to them? And we always mention that we bring it through our actions. We tell them the beauty of Islam. We show it through our actions, and we pray for them. And also that it's not in your hand. You just have to pass along the message. So he mentions to his messenger, فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرْ. Remind, and you are only one who reminds. لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِمُسَيْطِرٍ. And you are not a ruler or a dictator over them, where you can force them to believe. إِلَّا مَنْ تَوَلَّى وَكَفَرَ. Except the one who turns away and disbelieves, for those people, فَيُعَذِّبُ اللَّهُ الْعَذَابَ الْأَكْبَرَ. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish him with the greatest and most severe punishment. Inna ilayna iyabahum. Verily to us will be their return. Wa inna alayna hisabahum. And verily for us will be their reckoning. Allahumma hasiba hisaban yasira. May Allah make our reckoning for all of us easy. Ameen. So this was Surah Al-Ghashiyah. We mentioned in the beginning one of the virtues of Surah Al-Ghashiyah and Surah Al-A'la are those, they're surahs that are often read during the Friday prayer. I mean, it's not mandatory to read them, but they are often read by the Prophet ﷺ in the Friday prayer. Do you have any questions on this surah? Because after that, we'll take a break and pray.
I just wanted to make a comment that, the last couple of ayats that you read in regards to, like, we can't, thou art not one to manage men's affairs, like, you cannot bring them to force Islam upon them. I do think that's a huge, struggle sometimes as readers, because we're so excited that we found the truth and we want to share it with everyone. And sometimes we get discouraged because people are not seeing what we see or not understanding what we have discovered. And for us, it's common sense. And I feel like we have to, like, think back and remind ourselves Allah guides who He wills.
Right, and that's why I kind of mentioned this point, and this is important because the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he was in Makkah for how long? Tell me. Who knows how long he was in Makkah? After he received the message, how long did he preach in Makkah? 13 years. And by the time he left Makkah, he had very few followers. There was a few. It wasn't that many. And Islam spread a lot when he was in Medina. But for over those 13 years, it was just a few handfuls of followers. And it was hard on him, especially near the end, where the Meccans, they didn't know what to do with him, so they boycotted him. And by boycotting him, they meant they took him, his tribe, all the Muslims, and they locked them in a valley outside of Mecca. And they had very limited food and water. And during that time, his wife, who had supported him from the beginning, Khadija, died. And during that same time, very close after that, his uncle, Abu Talib, who had not become Muslim but had supported him a lot, he died. So the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him, went to another town called Taif. And he said, the people of Mecca have rejected me. Maybe the people of Taif will accept me. And he went there with a lot of hope. He went there with his message, and they sent like the teenagers and kids of the city to throw stones at him. And they pelted him with stones until he was bleeding and left the city. And he was very, you could say, he had a lot of, he was very sad over this. It hurt him. Not just physically, obviously, but like the fact that these people were rejecting him left and right. And that's why you see that in a lot of these Meccan surahs, you see Allah reassuring him that your job is just to deliver the message. It's not upon you to guide anybody's heart. It's upon Allah to guide somebody. Just do your best to show Islam through your actions, and wherever you can, don't engage in arguments and debates with people, and pray for them, and that Allah guides them. We'll take one more question, then we'll pray. You had a question, sister?
Yeah, I had a question when you talked about good deeds that non-Muslims do, right? And therefore, it does say that Allah will give them tenfold. So is that only in this dunya, and that's why it's not carrying over?
Allah will give them tenfold if they accept Islam.
That's
Like I
what it
mentioned,
says. And therefore, but for us, in our book, it's specific for us, but is it, how's that working? when it does say that.
So the people who are not Muslim and who do good deeds, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them some type of benefit of that in this life. Maybe He won't. That's up to him. But if they accept Islam, they're forgiven for all of their sins. They're given reward for the good that they did. They're given reward for the good that they did, and they're given reward forward as for any good deeds that they do because they're Muslim now.
I think what you're saying is it does say it in the Bible, and so my interpretation would be the followers of the original Bible, actual followers of Jesus, peace be upon him. That's how it would work.
The ones who did not ascribe partners with Allah, who worshipped Allah in the way that Moses and Jesus originally taught them to, and not the way that they changed them, then yes, those people who were true followers of those prophets will go to heaven, inshallah.
But not when they say Jesus is God.
No, because they've committed the
That's
biggest.
connection of
Correct.
Not with judge.
Right, because if you don't believe in Allah, if you don't believe in La ilaha illallah, that no one's worthy of worship except for Allah, then they haven't fulfilled the basic tenets of accepting Islam and accepting what Allah wants them to believe in, and how Allah wants us to worship Him. All right, let's pray, inshallah. Please make your body straight. Stand close together, foot to foot, shoulder to shoulder. That is for the men and the women both. That you make your body straight.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الحافظ التذاكر حتى يكون المقاصد كلا سوف تعلمون
سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. إياك ونعبد إياك نستعين ولنعبد رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمنا وما آمن به الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
All right. Sister Elise and Brother Chris are on too, mashallah. Yes.
Who do you want me to give this to?
What is it, the money orders? Just give it to Hafsa. Oh, give it to me. And I'll give it to them Monday morning, inshallah.
It's already made out to them, but the address is not there. I made it out so no one else could use it.
Okay.
So, and the receipt is in there also.
Well, you should keep the receipt, right? Yeah, you should keep the receipt, and then
And you know when you put on the thing about the posting the flyer every Tuesday, you said the next one would be 10/9. That's actually a Wednesday.
okay, Tuesday or Wednesday, sometime in the middle of the week. We should post
Wednesday
it.
would be good. I took the task. Wednesday would be good. for
Okay,
me.
just assign it to yourself and. Yes, the sound was off because I was having another conversation. Okay. We were just waiting for everybody to finish up their salat. We're on page 213, talking about the family system in Islam. Okay. Yes, I was on mute. My apologies. I'll repeat what we're saying. Said. So we're talking about the spousal rights and obligations, and we mentioned that Islam is a complete way of life. And being that Islam is a complete way of life, it's not just worshiping Allah on Sundays or on Fridays in our case, right? And fasting on certain days. It is a complete way of life. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us guidance on what we should and should not eat, for example, what we should and should not wear. And since it's a complete way of life, there are guidelines of our family relationships and the rights and that we have and the rights that we should give in the family. And this is important because once again, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leaves this thing up to our intellect, then people can make very oppressive interpretations which benefit themselves. And we see this in the West, where people will take advantage of things and set up their relationships and propagate a way of life which benefits certain people and oppresses certain people. Where the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, the divine system, the system of Islam, gives everybody their rights. Before Islam, and I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again because some people weren't here. Women were inherited So if a man had 6, 7, 10, 12, 15 wives, they would be split up amongst his heirs. So a man could marry the wife of his father, who wasn't his mother, obviously, but they would just be inherited. They had no choice in it. And they would be married multiple times, divorced multiple times. They weren't given any financial rights. They weren't given inheritance. And this is the systems that was going on. And this is not only in Arabia. If you go into European history as well, women really didn't have any types of rights.
This was happening in the US until the 1830s.
It happens in India even now. In India, women are cremated, people are cremated when they die, right? So, up until very recently, when a man died, his wife would just jump in the fire too, might as well, because her life was worthless after that. It was completely worthless if she didn't have a husband. So, and that's because of how society treated her. And Islam came and gave rights to everyone. So, for those who say that Islam oppresses women, I challenge them to actually study the system of Islam and see what rights women have. Man, I don't think they're repressed. I think we get the short end of the stick sometimes, right? You know, if they work, they don't even have to give us any of it. We don't have to go. We can't go 50-50 on the bills, right? It's our responsibility to take care of them. So where people say these types of things is because they haven't really studied the family system in Islam. One time, this was very recently, somebody who reverted said that, hey, my family has a question. I said, what's your family's question? Are women in Islam allowed to work? I'm like, yes, and they do, as long as it's not something that's not permissible, but they can work. And that was a big issue with this non-Muslim family, that they didn't think women had any rights in Islam because that's what they heard in the media. So, people really need to start reading and finding out what the truth is. So in this chapter, we're talking about the rights of the spouses. So when a man and a woman marry, the wife has certain rights, the man has certain rights. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has outlined some of them, and the author will discuss them here. All right, so we're going to read the wife's rights. So one of the brothers read this, please. One of the married brothers.
Is it a sin not to get married when you're good?
One of the brothers who's about to get married, maybe. Anybody?
You're out.
You want me to read it?
No, you can't.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, the wife's rights. First right of the wife is maintenance and residence. A wife's maintenance entails her incontestable right to food, drink, clothing, general care, and suitable home, even if she's wealthy. So the first thing a man has to provide his wife is basic maintenance. I said it like a car, didn't I? But like the regular stuff, like food, drink, clothing, the regular stuff that would be expected. Again, within reason. And general care in a suitable home. Even if she's wealthy, even if she works, even if she has money, these things the man has to provide for her. How is the amount of maintenance calculated? The husband should give to spend on his wife in accordance with his means, without either being extravagant or miserly. He shouldn't be like completely extravagant on it, shouldn't be stingy. As the Quran states, let the man of means spend according to his means, and let the man whose resources are restricted, let him spend according to what Allah has given him. Allah puts no burden on any person beyond what he is given. So if somebody is wealthy, they should spend out of their wealth on their wife. It shouldn't be that they're dressed at a certain level, or they're maintaining themselves at a certain level and the wife is at a level much below that. It shouldn't be that way. It should be something within reason. And if somebody is upon hard times, doesn't have a job, and their means are restricted, or in between jobs or something like that, they got injured, whatever the case may be, things are restricted, then out of what you can, to the best of your ability, to the best of your ability, right? And um, and the sisters have to also keep that in his mind as well. You know, it's always a bad thing for brothers and for sisters to compare yourself to someone else. Your situation is not theirs. What you see on social media is not real. All of those, what are they called? Those Muslim couples who are on YouTube, always all happy and everything like that. That's not reality. You know, they may give you some tips and guidelines, but watching that too much will just, I don't know, make you unsatisfied with what you have. It's not reality. Things on social media and YouTube is not real. We know that by now. So don't fall into comparing your situation to somebody else's, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given everybody a different situation. Right? So, you know, there's a difference between a man who's trying his best but just has restricted means, and a man who has means but just doesn't want to spend it. There's a difference in these things. So everybody's situation is different, and we should use our reasoning and our intellect and our understanding with that. He must spend on her in kindness without ever implying that he's doing her favors or humiliating her in any way whatsoever. Indeed, such maintenance is not a favor, but his duty. It's his duty, and he ought to discharge his affairs towards her, to his wife, in kindness, as the Quran clearly commands him to. Right?
I have a question.
Yes.
But prior to getting married, if a man does not have the means to support his wife, doesn't it say in the Quran that he should just keep fasting?
Well, it's also up to the woman. Why are you marrying him? If you know he doesn't have the means to do so, and that's one of your requirements, then don't marry him. Don't put yourself in that situation. There may be a woman who is okay with that. Okay. If you're not okay with that, then know that beforehand and don't marry him. Right? We have to always be realistic in our expectations. And, because when our expectations are realistic, then we're not disappointed. But yes, he should have enough to maintain his wife. But again, there's different categories of that.
Does it mean like she live over here and he lives over here and maintain both households like this? And hers, even if she's not married to another wife,
Why would they live apart?
I don't know everybody's situation, and I assume that everybody's situation doesn't always look like what it looked like next door.
So here's the thing. The husband and wife have to figure out something that works for them. I know a lot of times in today's society, it's not the traditional, they get married young, they live together, they have kids together, and they're in the same house. It's not always that. Divorce has become much more prevalent.
Why is that?
I'm not going to get into that right now. Let's stick on the subject because we're going to talk about divorce later. So when we get to that, we'll talk about that. But the different situations have become more prevalent. So you have to do what works for you. Again, there's no one size fits all. So for example, if a husband and wife decides that they're going to have two different houses on the different sides of town, right? Then they have to figure out how that works. Maybe that means that, hey, she's doing part of it, he's doing part of it. And if that works for both of them, great. But again, he has responsibilities to maintain her. But if she wants something beyond what is normal, then they have to figure that out. So what works for you may not work for somebody else. There's no one size fits all, especially in these types of different situations. Yes, if they're living in a traditional, yes, they're going to live under the same roof and everything like that. That's a little bit easier to describe, okay, what should happen. But if you're coming up with situations which are permissible, but a little bit out of the ordinary as far as what the traditional situations were, then you got to figure out what works for you too, and what's um, not oppressing somebody. And that may be him giving more than what her rights are. That could be part of it, or her saying that, okay, my rights may be this much, but I'll do a little bit less than that. It's fine. Whatever works for them. But make sure it's done out of kindness. Make sure it's done in mutual cooperation. Make sure you're not throwing it in each other's faces afterwards, or putting yourself in a position where that's going to happen. A lot of times, what will happen is in the beginning, we'll agree to something, but it's a difficult situation and we're not really being realistic. And then 8 months into it, now we're fighting over the thing that we knew was going to be an issue starting off with. Right? So I really need to be, and this is why, and I mentioned it in my last khutbah, if anybody got a chance to listen to it. I gave a khutbah on the oft recited sermon. That is usually the beginning part of the Friday khutbah, which is read in Arabic. A lot of time the person will read that and nobody knows what they're reading. Well, this was the khutbah that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Messenger of Allah, used to read on Fridays, and he used to read when people got married. And all three verses, it reminds us to fear Allah. It says, fear Allah and fear Him as He should be feared. Fear Allah, through whom you ask your mutual rights. Fear Allah, who created you from a single man and a single woman. And fear Allah, and always say a word directed to truth. And if we reflect on this and really have fear of Allah, then inshallah, that'll help a lot of our situations. All right, continuing on. When a Muslim man fulfills his duty of supporting his wife and children, he will be rewarded abundantly by Allah. As the Prophet ﷺ said, when a man spends on his family anticipating Allah's reward in the hereafter, this act will be counted as an act of charity. He also said, you will be rewarded for whatever you spend in Allah's sake, even if you put a morsel of food in your wife's mouth. For those who refuse or neglect their duty to spend on their families, despite their ability to do so, are committing a terrible sin for their negligence. As the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, a man who neglects those who are under his care will surely be committing a sin. Okay, so we talked about the first thing is financial support and residence. Second, living with her in kindness. This means showing good character, kindness, gentleness, in word and in deed, and in putting up with the occasional faults and negligence. As men, we have to understand our children, our wives, when our kids are kids, they're kids, right? We can't get too mad at them for a couple things. Similarly, our wives are women. They have emotions. They speak in a way where we don't understand it sometimes. We expect each other. If I ask Brother Ali something, give me a really direct response. Great. You ask a woman something, it's going to be all over the place, and you don't get that direct response, and she's mad, and you don't understand why she's mad. We have to be able to understand her good things, the good qualities she has, and the faults she has, because we all do. I'm not putting the sisters down. When we get to the other side, we'll talk about the brothers as well. But everybody has their goods and their bad, right? We have to understand. We have to be kind and gentle, especially with women. Try to be gentle. Being harsh doesn't work. As the Quran says, live together with them courteously and in kindness. If you dislike them, it may be that you dislike something in which Allah has placed a lot of good. So today you may find something that you dislike, but there may also be a lot of good there. So try to see the good there, right? you know the saying, grass is always greener on the other side, right? We sometimes we see the faults in somebody we're living with, and it's like, oh well, maybe somebody else will be better, but you don't know if that somebody else has, you know, 6 or 7 different faults that you'll never be able to handle. So a lot of times it's better to work with what you have and try to improve that situation rather than uh, doing something else. The Prophet ﷺ said, the believer who have perfect faith are those with the best character, and the best of them are the ones who treat their women the best. The believers who have perfect faith are, okay, is this the same one? Oh no, okay, there's a little bit different wording here. The best amongst you are those who treat their wives the best. Another narration, the best of you are the kindest towards their wives, and I am the kindest towards my wife. Remember, the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, was uswatul hasana, the most beautiful example for us. So, in his beautiful example is the way he treated his family, the way he treated his wives. And there's many, many examples of this. I wish we had a little bit more time, and maybe I'll go through that a little bit later, some examples of this. In the books of Hadith, we see chapters on his family life, just outlining his family life, how he was with his wives, how he was with the people in his house, his children. One of the Prophet's companions once asked the Messenger of Allah, "What is the right of the wife of one of us has on him?" He said, "To feed her whatever you feed yourself, to clothe her with whatever you clothe yourselves. Do not slap her in the face. Do not revile her. Do not separate yourself from her except in the house." Um, so this concept of hitting or abusing women is not part of Islam. Um, we should be kind. We should be gentle to them. And try to be as understanding as possible when things may be going awry. We refer them back to the Quran and Sunnah, see what the Prophet ﷺ says in the situation. Sometimes, it might not be at that time, it might have to take a little time to, let things cool down and revisit it again. But be patient and be wise in this. All right, so class is running a little bit long, so we'll continue this chapter, inshallah.
I have a
Next
question
week.
before, just
Sure.
clarification. When it says, do not, of course, that refers to face and bother, but separate yourself from her except in the house. So if there's a conflict within the marriage, they should just not leave the house or just,
I'll get back to you on that.
okay.
Let me look into that narration, the exact wording in Arabic first, and then I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Just remind me in the group chat. Okay. I want to, because we didn't get a chance to read this last week, I want to read one more hadith in this book, 30 hadiths for beginners. These are some really, really nice hadiths about manners, about things. Which one are we on? Okay, we read hadith number 4, right? We're on 5. Page number 28. Really important hadith. So this is a narration in which we learn some of the. We're in this book here. If you don't have this book, I'm going to read it out loud and just message in the group chat, and we'll try to get you a book or the PDF of the book. I don't have it right now, but I'll read it and you can follow along. This is a narration about the companions of the Prophet. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was sent to us as the best human, as the best man. And his companions were the best people. They learned from him. They acted upon the Quran and his teachings in a way we could not even understand. They sacrificed for him. On the battlefields, they put themselves in front of him. There was a time in the Battle of Uhud where the enemies were shooting arrows upon our beloved Prophet. And one of the companions stood there and offered his chest as a shield. And there are many, many examples of their bravery and their sacrifices for this religion. We would not be sitting here today as Muslims if it weren't for their sacrifices. So it is very important for us to respect them, never find fault in them, never speak illy of them. Um, and this is one of the narrations which talks about their virtue. This hadith is a famous hadith about the 10 who were promised paradise. There were many people who were promised paradise in the time of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, but this is a specific hadith where by name he took their names and said that these people were people of paradise. And Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiallahu anhu قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أبو بكر في الجنة والعمر في الجنة والعثمان في الجنة والعلي في الجنة والطلحة في الجنة والزبير في الجنة والعبد الرحمن بن عوف في الجنة وسعد في جنة وسعيد في الجنة وأبو عبيدة بن الجراح في الجنة. Abdurrahman ibn Auf narrates that Rasulullah, the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, Abu Bakr is in paradise, Umar is in paradise, Uthman is in paradise, Ali is in paradise, Talha is in paradise, Az-Zubair is in paradise, Abdurrahman ibn Auf is in paradise, Sa'ad, meaning Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, is in paradise, Sa'id is in paradise, and Abu Bayda ibn Jarrah is in paradise. So these are 10 companions who were amongst the earliest companions, and they sacrificed a lot in comparison to those who came later on, because in the early times there were very few Muslims. They were oppressed, they were beaten, they were tortured, they were boycotted, they were, a lot of things happened, and they had to migrate. A lot of things happened, a lot of sacrifices had to be made at that time. Later on, when Islam became more powerful, it was easier. So these were some of the earliest companions who sacrificed a lot for this deen. And based on this narration, the author, if you've noticed, has collected the hadith based on this narration. So the first narration was from Abu Bakr, the second was from Umar, the third was from Uthman, the fourth was from Ali, and the fifth is from Abdurrahman ibn Auf. So it'll be these 10 in the first 10. So it's just a beautiful way that he organized this book. So this is a narration. It also tells us how pious these people were. Because people nowadays, if they knew that they were guaranteed Jannah, what would they do? I'm done. I don't need to pray. I don't need to fast. I don't need to do nothing. Right? I'm already in. They weren't like that. Only encouraged them to do more until the end of their lives. You can't find any example of them slacking off or being lazy or being like, you know what? I already made it. I made my sacrifices. I did my time. Let me enjoy life now. That's not how they were. That only encouraged them. That only encouraged them to do more out of thankfulness of Allah. So they are beautiful examples for us. Yes, sister.
I was gonna ask, you remember the hadith that one of the companions was crying at the grave because he was scared that, even as one of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he still thought he wasn't good enough to go to Jannah. He was crying. Was he one of the?
I think you may be mixing two things. I remember the narration about Uthman. When he would go to the grave, he would cry.
Yeah.
And they would ask him, why do you cry at the grave? And he said, this grave is the first step of your afterlife. And he would remember that and cry. And this was their humility. Umar radiallahu anhu used to, it's a long story, I'll tell it later. But even this was their humility. They weren't like all big about it, that, I was one of the earlier companions, don't talk to me. Right? how we would be. We get a little bit of study 2 books, and we're like, oh man, I'm something now, right? It wasn't like that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us on the path that they were on. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put love in our hearts for them. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on us. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. All right. Let the sisters